Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing Batman Zero Year Secret City. Now, origin stories. They are important to characters in fictional media, and very important to the superhero. It defines on who the character is. It makes them who they are. Now that origin could be something that is him getting superpowers, or dealing with a great tragedy, or having to face a powerful foe, and being that individual that stands up to them. Whatever the case may be, origins are important to characters. And oftentimes in comic books, origins have to be updated and changed, because comic book characters consistently grow throughout the ages. Unlike some media, Batman's been around for 75 years, but he's always in his 30s, and with that, sometimes you have to update things about the character. And that's one of the beauties about comic book characters, is because they grow and change throughout the ages. You look at someone like Superman now, and you look at him back in his original inception in the 30s, and he's not the same character. And I mean, on one hand, that's fantastic because we get that progression and growth, but at the same time, you get to go back and kind of enjoy Superman in a different way. What I'm trying to get at is, oftentimes we have to update the origins of characters. Look at Superman himself. He's had multiple changes in his origins since the 1980s, with the John Byrne stuff, to Birthright, to Secret Origin, to New 52, to Rebirth. It's been just a clutter of him getting changes in his origin. Batman, however, is kind of an exception to this rule. Batman's only had one rebirth, reboot, revamp, redo of his origin, and that was in the 1980s with Batman Year One. Up until that point, from the 1930s onwards, Batman origin was relatively the same. Bam bam, parents got killed, I gotta make a vow to fight evil, and here we go. It was a very simple origin, but it worked very well. However, it was never really expanded upon. So, when the 1980s came around and there was the Crisis on Infinite Earths and the reboot of the DC Universe, it was a perfect chance to bring Batman's origin in a modern era. It is still bam bam, parents dead, I'm going to make a vow to fight evil, but now there's other elements brought in, with Commissioner Gordon, Catwoman, the Falcones, Commissioner Loeb, all these other characters that are brought in that kind of expanded on that story. But the great thing about Year One is it was a very focal on the corruption and the evil that was happening during that time period. Things have changed on the next 30 years. You know, stuff that was a target of evil back then isn't necessarily the target of evil now. Stuff that were the concerns of the daily lives of individuals then aren't as prevalent as they are now. There are other things. You know, within a world where we have terrorism and natural disasters and just overall fear running amok, it's hard to have a story like Batman Year One, which ages incredibly well, still be the definitive story for Batman. So, Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, who at the time is crushing it with Batman, just absolutely doing one of the best runs Batman's had in ages, was given the daunting task of having to retell Batman's origin. And trust me, it is a daunting task. I mean, Year One, whether you like Frank Miller or you don't, is one of the best Batman stories out there. It's just fantastic. It does so many things right, from its art, through its storytelling, through its narrative, through it being just as much a Jim Gordon story as it is a Batman story. But, like I said, I mean, things have changed, and taking on a task of rewriting that story that's so epic and so much of a staple in the Batman mythos, I wouldn't want to be Scott Snyder. I wouldn't want to be Greg Capullo. I mean, that's a huge, heavy burden to have on your back. So what they decided to do is take a different approach. Rather than doing a 4-issue miniseries that tells that origin of Batman, and the main Batman comic, they decided to do a 3-story, 12-issue series. And basically each story is going to be 4 issues long, cultivating over a year, 0-year stories. There would be multiple tie-ins here and there, but basically it would just be those 3 stories. And Secret City, it's the first of them. Let's get into the story itself. Basically, Bruce Wayne had returned to Gotham after being gone for God knows how long, forever. And although he's back in Gotham, he hasn't officially announced, ladies, Bruce Wayne's back. Gotta get some action. Bad action, no. He hasn't announced that he's back yet. He's kind of going about his thing, getting the lay of the land, seeing how much Gotham has changed. And because of which, He hasn't donned the persona of Batman yet. However, he has hit a roadblock, and that roadblock is the Red Hood gang. Now, the Red Hood gang is led by Red Hood 1, who many of its members, not all, but many of its members were blackmailed into joining the gang because he has secrets on everyone. And Red Hood 1 basically wants to create chaos in Gotham. He was inspired by Bruce Wayne's parents getting killed. These zealots of good, this powerhouse of truth and justice in Gotham, shot dead from a random act of crime. And that inspired him to become the criminal that he is. Bruce Wayne, unable to cope with the fact that he has to deal with this menace, needs inspiration. And through his father, is inspired to become a bat. And thus Batman is born. And the story ends with Batman versus Red Hood. Who will come up on top? And through victory, will a great enemy rise? Well, you're just going to have to read and see. Good, bad, whether or not you should get it. Good. Let's start off with paying tribute, because that's an important thing. This book pays a lot of tribute to Batman stuff of the past. Whether it's things like Red Hood 1 being basically the origin for Joker, although it's not blatantly said, Joker's original persona before he became Joker was Red Hood. And a lot of things for Red Hood 1 lines up with Joker in this. So paying tribute to that, spoiler alert, but you probably could figure it out. Or for various different artistic choices, like when you see him first become Batman, he's kind of sticking people on a sign and he's holding someone by their chest/neck. And that is a tribute to Detective Comics issue number 27. Or probably the greatest tribute is the Batsuit. The Zero-Year suit isn't the normal Batman suit that we all know and love, the New 52 suit. It is basically a homage to the original Batman suit. If you go back and type in Batman's first suit, you're going to notice that it's very different. For example, the ears at the top are a little bit more angled. The cowl kind of points down a bit more. He has purple gloves that are only up to his wrist rather than black gloves with the blades. His cape is actually a two-part cape that's split in the back to make it look more like wings. And then he also has a giant WWE Championship belt. It's a big belt with a huge circular buckle. And what Greg Capullo did is he took this costume from the 1930s, brought it into the modern era, and kind of updated and changed it. Made it very Spartan, very militaristic looking, but made it basically the origin costume. And it's a beautiful costume. It looks well. The only complaint I have with it is that I don't like the belt as much. It doesn't pay as much of a homage as the other material, but for the most part, it's a great looking costume. So there's a lot of tribute to a lot of stuff in here, and that goes to another thing I like, because I did talk about Red Hood a bit. Having Red Hood in this comic is a great villain to have. I really like to see the dynamic of the two kind of being both inspired by Martha and Thomas Wayne's death, and having it really shape and grow these characters differently. I like the fact that it pays tribute to Killing Joke. In a way, it pays tribute to how Joker's origin happens. And Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder are like, we're not making the Joker's origin, but you basically are. And with everything that's going on with the Joker right now, with his identity may be revealed, or there's 3 Jokers, it's nice to have this as like a stable point, at least for one of them, to know that this is kind of the Joker's origin. And it's cool. It's an enjoyable origin. I don't want a sympathetic origin for Joker. I want him to be a bad person all the time, because that's what the Joker is. So I do enjoy that too. The dialogue in this is very nice, and a lot of characters that have been missing from the Batman universe come back, like Uncle Philip. Uncle Philip was there during the origin of Batman, and he wasn't even actually ever shown on screen. He was more or less just off-screen in a one dialogue bubble, and Scott Snyder said, hey, Bruce has an uncle, might as well have him get pulled in. So that's cool too. But the action is good, the dialogue is good, and is fairly well-paced. Bad. The bad about this is that this isn't a standalone story. You can read it as a standalone story, no doubt about that. You can say this is New Year 1 right here, but it leads into the next part of Zero Year, which is fine because it's a 12-issue, 3-story arc. But I'd much rather have it just be its own individual thing. This story is about crime and correction. This story is about a big storm that engulfs Gotham. And the next story is about Gotham being overgrown and being kind of in chaos. So It would have been nice if this story was individual in itself, rather than being connected to to the overall 0-year arc. And I know that's a minor gripe, because you're probably going to read the rest of 0 Year, but I do come to the conclusion that origins are almost better when they're shorter. Year 1 did a very good job at an origin because it's a 4-issue story. Like, the rest gets filled in with Legends of Dark Knight and all that fun jazz of the other Batman stuff. I would have almost liked it if 0 Year was just this story here, this individual story, and then have a separate Batman comic telling 0 Year stories. Because I like this costume. I like it like it's the first costume for Batman. And don't get me wrong, the New 52 costume is my favorite costume of all time. But I think they introduced the New 52 a little too quickly. It comes in at the end of 0 Year, but it would have been nice to have a lot more stories in between then. So that's kind of one of the, I think the glaring bad of it is just that it's not its own individual story, which is annoying, but it is what it is. The other thing is technology. It's nice that this is being done in a modern era where Batman's gadgets kind of make sense. Like, let's be honest. Batman from the 1980s using blow darts and batarangs, going from that to him in the 2000s having weaponry and machinery to be able to take on Superman just doesn't make sense. But the only thing I don't like about this is the fact that his father has a holographic projector machine that basically could be thrown down and has cameras in it, which is fine, that takes pictures of the layer, whatever you throw it in a cave or if you throw it in like a class building to find people, that's fine, but then you can create a holographic projection of it across the room. Let's be honest here. This story takes place basically 6 years ago, so in 2010. Basically. And let's just say Batman is right now in his mid-30s. I'm not mid-30s, early 30s. So let's say 31. I'm 29, okay? I was born in 1987. So let's just say Batman is 2 years older than me, 2 years older than me, born in 1985. That means when his father showed him this technology, it was early 90s. There is no way, in even a comic book universe, that I'm going to believe that his father has the ability to create holographic technologies on a doctor's salary. That was a small thing, but it's a small thing that like really tweaked at me. In saying that, while I do believe that Year 1 is still the superior of the two stories, for the modern era, Secret City does a fantastic job at bringing Batman and his origin forward. I liked Red Hood stuff. I liked the use of the costume. I liked the overall story itself. The small minor things that tweak me I can kind of get over. But this is a really good story. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. If you're looking for an origin story for Batman, I do recommend Year 1 also. I recommend reading them both because there's no disadvantage in reading them both. But if you want kind of a great place to start for Batman and the modern era, if you're like, Andrew, I want to get into New 52, well, obviously I recommend the Court of the Owl stuff first because that's the beginning of it. But if you're like, I want to go in chronological order, well then do it. This is a good story. I recommend getting it. 4 out of 5 stars. With that said, this is Andrew saying, peace out for now.